So I've seen some discussions on boxing retirement, and there has been some interesting insights, and I wanted to give the boxing philosophy perspective. So let's open that door. I'm going to explore 10 ideas. Idea number 1. Boxers don't retire from a sport, they retire from an addiction to their own adrenaline. Of course, it's hard to quit a dependency, and people often don't see boxing as a dependency. Boxing is often framed as prize fighting. You're purely fighting for the money. But boxing can give people identity, and it can give them additional purpose. And for the ones that reach the 1% or reach the elite levels, when boxing gives you credibility, respect, that's a hard thing to walk away from. Because the currency of respect, the currency of credibility is a big thing. And it's important to recognize that when something makes you great, there's going to be a willingness to want to still hold on to that. But sometimes that thing that makes you great, which may be synonymous with taking risks, being audacious, and being courageous, can be the same thing that can destroy you. Idea number 2, ego doesn't fade with age. Johnny Nelson, former champion, admits it nags fighters into their 70s. Ego perhaps drives the soul. That's not a bad thing. Ego is, I guess from a definition point of view, it's a person's sense of self-esteem, the conscious mind. It's the I that interacts with the world. Like I said, maybe the ego is the fuel that keeps us going. And maybe ego is part of the thing that makes it so hard for boxers to walk away. Remember, boxers or any athletes, elite athletes, they have tremendous amounts of confidence. And when you have a tremendous amount of confidence and previously had a tremendous amount of ability, and when you have a great mindset, you can always theoretically envision being successful. But sometimes you might have the psychology of a champion, but when you lose the physicality of the champion or the physical tools of being a champion, it's so essential to recognize that and walk away with your head high. Idea number 3, Fury retired after Wilder 3 with total sincerity, as we believed, then reversed within months. Why? Why do fighters retire, then come back? Is it the money? Is it the fame? Is it the respect? Or is it part of their identity? I've always had this thing where I feel like when you're a fighter, it's like it's hard to become a fighter, especially if you become an elite level fighter and then go from being elite to having the world watching you and then transition into being a normal person. And I think a lot of people don't like that. I think the Tyson Fury situation is quite unique because I think boxing, it's not just the buzz and the adrenaline. I think it's the regime that Tyson Fury has when he's boxing. So I think he values the currency of discipline, going to the gym every day, boxing every day, staying in shape. So I think that Tyson Fury has done a lot for boxing, but boxing has also done a lot for Tyson Fury. And of course, it's hard to step away from that center stage. Idea number 4, for Dave Allen and Natasha Jones, losing boxing meant losing their entire identity, not just a job. Boxing again can be so powerful. The adrenaline rush, it's underestimated. Imagine being Usyk going out to fight Daniel Dubois in front of 90,000 people at the Wembley Arena. Imagine that. Like, can you even picture 90,000 people? People say, I think there's this narrative bias that they do it for the money, and that's partly true, but it doesn't pick up the nuanced part of the story. In boxing, you can become the hero. In boxing, you become the gladiator. You can become the gladiator. You can become highly respected. And people love that currency, the respect, the admiration. Again, all of these things, when you put all these ingredients together, it's a very tasty dish. And of course, that's partly why it's difficult to walk away. Idea number 5, Ricky Hatton needed a body shot knockout to confirm what his mind previously refused to accept. First off, R.I.P. Ricky Hatton. RIP to the great legend Ricky Hatton. But the good thing about Ricky Hatton with regards to his boxing career is that he did accept it. He gave it his all, and then he came to a conclusion that I can't do this at the elite level anymore. He wasn't deluded. And with his style of being so aggressive, of being an aggressive fighter, he had that brutal left hook to the body. And he was one of those guys that I can imagine you just don't want to fight, particularly if you're a defensive-minded fighter. Yes, he gives you counter-punch opportunities, but you know you're going to have a brutal night if you're in there with a prime Ricky Hatton. But Ricky Hatton was so tough that you know it's going to be hard to have a career that has longevity. And, you know, you look at fighters that have longevity, you look at Floyd Mayweather, he's a defensive first fighter. And that's partly why he's been able to fight for such an extended period of time. Shakur Stevenson also is a defensive style fighter. And, you know, I always contend that I feel like Ricky Hatton gave Floyd Mayweather a really good fight. I know that he got stopped in the 11th round, but he made Floyd Mayweather so uncomfortable. He really did. And I remember when he beat, was it Costa Zoo? That was a great night. Ricky Hatton was so ferocious that night. He was brutal. He was vicious. The body shots, the tempo, the front foot pressure. He just would not let up on Costa Zoo that night. And like I said, RIP to the legend. Idea number 6, Lennox Lewis built an explicit get-out plan before he ever needed one. When Lennox Lewis fought Vitali, I mean, watch that Vitali fight. Lennox Lewis looked really bad in that fight. And Vitali looked really good. And that fight was nearly a disaster. Lennox Lewis took a lot of punches. People say that Lennox Lewis had issues with his chin. Well, he didn't have issues with his chin on that night. He was taking all sorts of punches. Big respect to Lennox Lewis for being able to get through that night and being able to be victorious. But the interesting thing here is that Lennox Lewis retired, but more importantly, he never came back. And I know that he was lured with, you know, massive financial incentives, but he stuck to his guns. And it's interesting because Lennox Lewis was known, particularly at the time, as like a chess player. He liked to play chess. I believe in preparation, he would play chess a lot, according to himself. And with regards to retirement, he made a calculated and effective chess move. Idea number 7, 90% of boxers Eddie Hearn manages don't earn enough money to pay tax, yet the top 1% frame the entire narrative. I think it's important to recognize here that that doesn't mean that Eddie Hearn isn't paying his fighters enough. I think Eddie Hearn's financial infrastructure reflects the rest of the boxing infrastructure. So I don't want to frame that on him. But the point is that the 1% are the ones earning the majority of the money. Therefore, the boxing, you know, all boxers are rich or the majority of boxers are rich is a myth. And it's actually, you know, is it actually hiding a secret poverty epidemic? Because if you take away the 1%, most boxers probably struggle to feed their family. Most boxers are probably poor. Do most boxers, or are most boxers able to feed themselves and their family? That's an interesting question. And do they have any type of money in investments? Do they have any type of financial portfolio after when they retire? How much financial literacy does your average boxer have? How much financial literacy does your average elite athlete have? The point here is that there's a problem within the structure. Of course, as with any meritocracy, the people that reach the top, they get paid handsomely. But for every 1%, there's 99% that are making pennies. And that seems to be grossly unfair. And it's what they call a narrative bias, a survivorship bias, to look at the 1% and think that that represents the objective truth, because that's clearly not the case. And the 8th idea is that George Groves retired, maybe not on top, but he retired at the right time because, yes, he lost, but he lost, I think it was against Callum Smith, and he realized that that was the end. And in that loss, I believe it was it the finals? I think it was a Super 6 tournament. And It was a brutal loss. I believe it was like a counter left hook and a ruthless body shot. Callum Smith was vicious that night. He was elite that night. And George Groves recognized that this was the time to leave. And of course, he achieved a lot. He had some great fights with Carl Froch. He'd won a world title and he left. And more importantly, he never came back. Did he have the compulsion to come back? Probably. But he resisted that urge. And a lot of people can't resist that urge. And for many boxers, I mean, the question is, why do boxers come back? And I think that's an important question. And I think it's not just the adrenaline rush. For a lot of boxers, that may be one of the ways they make a living. And when you've got increasing inflation issues and increasing economic issues in the world, inevitably boxers, like other athletes, if you can make 10 grand doing a boxing match and you're struggling with money, why wouldn't you come back? If you could make 50 grand, 100 grand, why wouldn't you come back? Especially if you have a passion for it. So, it can become really difficult to manage those impulses, to manage those finances. It can become a monster. Idea number 9, there is no boxers union, no pension system, no aftercare. Barry Hearn had a pension idea and he got accused of theft. That made me think, what was Barry Hearn's pension idea and why was he accused of theft? I wonder what was his idea of how to implement this boxers union? How was he planning on implementing this pension system? And why were people thinking this is theft as opposed to thinking this could actually protect fighters outside of the 1%? I'm a big believer that financial education is needed, not just for all boxers, but for all athletes. It's important to recognize that not all money is good money. And when you look at contracts, it's important to understand what you're signing. And it's important that you maximize that small financial window that you have as a boxer if you become one of the lucky ones and get to the 1%. You have to capitalize on that moment. But not only do you have to capitalize on the moment, you also have to build, well, ideally, you want to make a lot of money, build a big financial portfolio so that when you do retire, you retire because you want to retire and you don't retire and come back because you have financial money problems. Because I think when fighters return to boxing because they have financial money problems, as opposed to the passion, that's always a potentially dangerous journey. And finally, number 10, Sugar Ray Leonard, the great Sugar Ray Leonard. You had the great Sugar Ray Robinson. Some say he's the greatest fighter of all time. And then you had the great Sugar Ray Leonard of the 80s. He beat the odds when he beat the great Marvin Hagler. Most people will remember when Marvin Hagler had the 3-round war against the great Tommy Hearns. What an amazing fight that was. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. And perhaps it's events like this that can convince fighters that they're the exception. They're not past their prime. Or even if they are declining with their skill set, they can have that one last magical moment. The point here is that a positive mindset can create catastrophic outcomes. And how do you manage that? How do you manage optimism with reality? Because to achieve great things, you need audacity and you need optimism. But sometimes the audacity, the optimism, and the risk can lead you down a very dangerous path. Okay, so let's finish this we're going to finish on 7 questions. So question number 1, are boxers addicted to competition or to the identity boxing gives them? I think every boxer is a different individual. I think some people are addicted to the identity. Some people are addicted to the competition. Some people are addicted to the buzz. Some people are addicted to the glory. Some people who get respect and admiration of elite standards are addicted to the accolades. So I think there's a variety of reasons why boxers find it hard to leave. And of course, there's economic reasons as well. Question number 2, does ego protect a fighter's confidence or protect them from accepting decline? Confidence is essential in boxing. If you go into a fight and you think you're going to lose, you're going to lose. So you have to go in confident. Not only do you have to believe that you're going to win, you've got to believe that you're going to have great preparation. You've got to believe in your strategy. You've got to believe in your corner. You've got to believe in your strength conditioning trainer. You know, there's a whole lot of belief going on. That's an important currency in boxing. However, overconfidence or misplaced confidence without a dose of reality can be dangerous when a fighter is nearing the end of their career. Question 3, why do so many sincere retirements end in comebacks? I think when Evander Holyfield retired in the first Riddick Bowe fight, I think he probably felt so much physical pain that he thought, I don't ever want to do this again. And then when he retired against Michael Moorer, again, he probably felt that physical pain and thought, I don't ever want to do this again. But once that feeling leaves, there's not just the money, there's not just the credibility, but there's that adrenaline rush, fighting in front of thousands of people and doing what you sincerely love to do. It's a hard thing to turn down. Question number 4. Is losing boxing harder because fighters lose purpose, status, and adrenaline at once? Is losing boxing harder because fighters lose purpose? I'm not sure about that. I think in boxing you have this weird situation of the undefeated record, the protected record, and in UFC, to play devil's advocate, in UFC there are no protected records, so people are not critical of losses. I think in boxing, once you have a loss, I mean, even if you lose a round, some of these fans are just so overly critical. And when you lose, you don't just lose a fight, you lose money. It can affect branding. It can affect your growth. You can lose a respected title. Like losing in boxing is different to losing in football. You can literally lose one fight and lose it all and be written off. I don't think you lose purpose. With regards to status, in a literal sense, if you're the WBC title and you lose a fight, you lose the WBC title. But if you've established yourself as a great fighter, then you still maintain the status of a great fighter. Question 5, did Lennox Lewis retire at the perfect time or escape just before decline? Lewis, I'm not sure if he retired at the perfect time, but I tell you which would have been the worst time to have retired. When he lost to Hasim Rahman the first time, he could have retired, but that would have been the wrong thing to do, because in hindsight, we know that he had that performance of the rematch. And then following from that, we had the performance of the Mike Tyson fight. Granted, it wasn't the same Mike Tyson in the 90s, but still, Mike Tyson had a massive cultural impact and is a huge name, and that was an important name on Lennox Lewis's resume. So his retirement point meant that he only had the loss to Oliver McCall, to Hasim Rahman, and it enabled that, yes, he had that really, but it was a victory, but it was a really bad night. It was, he took a lot of punches, but had he had the rematch, yes, he could have won, but there may have been a strong possibility that if he was to lose, it might have been a bad loss. So it was a good time to retire. Maybe the perfect time to retire would have been after the Mike Tyson fight. I'm not sure, but he definitely, in terms of picking a retirement point, Lennox Lewis is one of the best at that. Idea number 6, is boxing's wealth narrative hiding the financial struggles of most fighters? Of course, this has got to do with social proof and survivorship bias. It's like, look at authors. You go into Waterstones, you see all these authors, you see all these books, bestsellers. And if you was to make an assessment based on being in Waterstones or being in a bookshop, you would assume that the majority of authors are bestsellers. But that would be a false premise, because 99% of authors are not bestsellers. Most probably don't sell 100 copies, 50 copies. But when you're in that environment where you just see the winners, you just see the survivorship bias, it can cloud your assessment. So when you Google boxing or when you type boxing into YouTube, you see people that have made millions. But that's not a fair assessment of your everyday boxer. Most boxers will not see millions. They may not even see thousands. It's a difficult game. And that's a reflection of capitalism, not just boxing in general. That's a reflection of most industries. And the final question, the seventh question, is, can belief extend a career or convince a fighter they are the exception? When a belief is based on a level of decline, then that is dangerous. So for example, let's say if you started at a 10 and then you go from a 9 to an 8, yes, you're declining, but you're still an 8. So if you've got a belief and elite preparation and elite trainers, then you can still win, you can still have successes. But if you've gone from a 10 to a 2, so now you've got elite confidence, but not those elite abilities, and then you don't have an elite team, then unfortunately, you're going to be in some trouble. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.